It is very easy to hear people talk in generality about Department of Labor plans like 401ks and 403bs. It's very easy to hear people, especially those who sell things like annuities, to talk about rolling money out of a 401k. You probably shouldn't always do that, and there are rules you need to know about. One of those rules, a potential possibility, is the rule of 55. We're going to talk about that on Consider This program today. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Aaron Rheaume,
the Director of Financial Planning at the Financial Enhancement Group. Aaron, great to have you along.
Thank you, Joe.
Hey, if you're new to the show or you're listening to us on the radio, on one of the multiple stations that we're on, or our podcast, Consider This program, we are happy to have you along. Aaron and I are getting ready to tackle what I call the rule of 55. You may not find that on the internet anywhere. But I want to explain to you how some of this stuff works. So I'm gonna start off, and I know if you're listening on the radio or a podcast, you can't see this. If you're on our YouTube channel, you can. But the way that I taught my Purdue students, I was a professor at Purdue for 7 years, where I taught the capstone course in financial planning. The way that I taught them was to draw a circle on the board. So I'm making a big circle now. You just can't see it, right? And when you hear people talk about 401ks, and the Department of Labor really controls those rules, right? There's six little letters that really scare me: SEC and DOL, right? Because they have an unlimited ability to be able to do whatever they want to do for the most part. But the Department of Labor defines rules in that circle that you can have inside of your 401k plan, right? Now, that doesn't mean that every 401k has that rule, and you need to be aware of that so that you don't hear me or anyone else talk in a generality and you assume, think bad news bears for those of us that are in our 50s and 60s, right? Do not assume that it means that you can have it. So Aaron and I are going to walk through what this rule is, how it might apply to you, and what you might want to consider. So Aaron, why don't you go ahead and tell me, what is the rule of 55?
Joe, the rule of 55 is set up by the IRS, and so it allows for distributions to come out of a 401k plan prior to 59 and a half. So, most people have to take or wait on that 59 and a half age, or else there's a 10% penalty. So this is a way that if you are thinking about or pondering potentially retiring earlier, is a way that you could possibly do that. But you have to be very careful and make sure, one, the plan allows it, but two, make sure that it is going to be in your best interest, and we'll get into a little bit more of that.
Even though the IRS, and it's important you guys catch this, even though the Department of Labor and the IRS say that can be a rule.
Sure.
It's not in every plan.
It's not in every plan, and normally your company plan document will specify whether that's allowed.
So I will tell you that a plan document is something that, if you work at a big company, that plan document is probably created specifically for the company. We have 33 people on our team. They all have a 401k plan. We contribute to that 401k plan for them every year, and my plan document is considered to be a template of one that's used because it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars less. So it has some restrictions that are in it that a bigger company plan may or may not have. Sure. That's inside of it. So if I heard you right, the rule of 55 allows me to withdraw money out of my 401k without a 10% penalty, provided I'm over 55, provided the plan document, which is the ruling governing body of that 401k, allows me to be able to take the money out. What are the restrictions?
Well, one, you have to be retired, so you can't do it while you're actively working.
There or anywhere?
There in your last 401k plan.
Anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere.
Right. When you have, and this has nothing to do with Social Security income. It has, obviously at 55, you're probably not getting that, but it has nothing to do with Social Security income or investments. You just can't go get another job at another company. Correct. And go make $100,000, right, and continue to do it.
Yeah, so you don't you want to make sure you're using this specifically for retirement.
Right. So tell me, walk this through for me. How would it look? What would we do if somebody came into our office and had $1 million inside of a 401k and was 57, and so they need money for essentially 36 months, right?
Correct.
Well, not even 36 months. 2.5 years, right, until you get to 59 and a half, and then all the 10% penalty part's gone.
Sure.
Under the tax code we have today. So they got $1 million in a 401k, and they need $50,000 a year to replace their standard of living. What would you tell them?
Well, first we want to look at all of their assets in general, so not just inside of the 401k plan. Are there other savings accounts that we might possibly be able to look at to offset some of that income? Is there a spouse that's still working that's providing income? If we get down to where the 401k is the first resource that we're going to need to use, and we're able to use the rule of 55, we want to make sure we're leaving enough money inside of that 401k plan in order to make the distributions so that they can meet that $50,000 standard of living.
And what would we do with the rest of the money?
You could roll it into an IRA, invest it, and it's really dependent on what's in that person's best interest, but you could roll the majority of it out, making sure we're leaving the specific amount to cover their standard of living.
So I can get money out of a 401k without moving the entire account.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And this is, folks, this is something that you really have to pay attention to. I mean, we have a conflict of interest. And just you need to hear me say that. You need to understand that we have a conflict of interest throughout our industry. We get paid to manage money, right? So if somebody is given the opportunity to roll your $1 million 401k out into an annuity, they're going to make a $50,000 to $70,000 commission to do that, right? They're not going to try to get you to leave behind a quarter of it. Right? If you're dealing with a registered investment advisor or a fiduciary, in theory, if they understood the tax code, which not all of us do, I don't get paid as a fiduciary for you on the tax planning side. I do that as a CFP, and because I think it's my calling, and Aaron believes that as our director of financial planning, and that's the way that we function throughout our process, is to do the right thing, whether that's investments or whether that's legacy planning. We want to help you make the best financial decisions for your financial journey in terms of where you're out there. It doesn't do us any good to get good returns and to let you mess something else up somewhere else simply because you're unaware. We simply don't know what we don't know, right? I mean, that is part of the deal and part of the process. So when you're looking at these decisions, you have to understand the person across the table, including us, right? The person across from the table has a conflicted interest in telling you to move the money out of the 401k into an IRA or into another account. Now, here's the catch-22. So does the custodian who has the money, right? And so if it's at Fidelity or if it's at one of the wirehouses, and people are telling you, well, you shouldn't necessarily take the money out of the 401k, understand there's a conflict of interest on that side as well, right? So you really have to find people that you trust, understand what the process is, understand why they're making the decisions that they're making. Don't be fearful to the degree that you don't take action, but we really have to think this through and make sure people are able to put in front of you a plan that says, hey, this is what we're going to do, not today, not tomorrow. This is what we're going to do this year. This is what we're going to do next year. Here's what we're going to do the year after, and understand how that really, really, really plays out.
Can I bring a point home to
Absolutely.
what you're just talking about? So you really want to listen to what Joe's talking about and the guidance there, and making sure that you're doing this with someone that understands how all of this works. Because if you don't do this correctly, let's say in the instance that or the example that you provided, we didn't factor in enough distributions, and we did roll more money out of that 401k plan into an IRA. Now we just subject that person to potentially early distribution penalties because they're not 59 and a half. So it does take, it's complex, and some plans allow it. The other thing that I've seen inside of plan documents, Joe, is some employers actually make you take a full lump sum, and we would not advise to do that. So it's
Not if you're under 59 and a half.
correct.
And unless you've got a lot of money in other accounts,
Yep.
you really, really don't want to do that. Now, one of the things that, we didn't get into, and this was a short order term, but one of the things that Aaron or Grant or any of our team would teach you in the office is what we call bracket bumping. And that's where this really becomes important. Even if you're 55 years old, it's about maximizing that tax bracket. I think most of us that are listening to the show, and certainly the two presenters, are concerned with future tax rates and codes. And whether that changes under the current administration or not is yet to be seen. I wouldn't panic over it, but I would prepare for it. What we do know is, as of December 31st of 2025, this puppy goes back to where we were in 2017 before the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. That's the difference between when you hear something that's permanent in the tax code, and we all know there's no such thing. It just takes 60 senators to be able to vote to make the change. A sunset means they have to vote to keep it in. And I think we would be overly optimistic to believe that we can get 60 senators to vote to keep the existing tax code that we have in today, which means as you build your investment plan, as you build your, what many people would call a retirement plan, what we would call your life after work, as you structure that, you have to be thinking about a movable rock, and in this case, maybe closer to a boulder. I think many of us are under the belief, I know I was when I started in the industry, that people worked at one tax bracket and retired at a lower tax bracket. I can tell you 33 years later, as a CFP, I'm responsible for over $600 million and almost 1,200 families across the country. It ain't true. It's just not true. Most of us do not retire at a lower tax bracket. And so you have to have an attitude of, where do you think the tax code is going? Where is it moving toward, higher or lower? And then you've got to make decisions on how you want to treat your money. This rule of 55 is just one of those things. So I would tell you to call 800-928-4001. Get signed up for a Next Steps meeting. It's a courtesy meeting. In 90 minutes, we'll tell you things you need to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future, and if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you. YourLifeAfterWork.com, 800-928-4001.